So our first speaker I'd like to introduce is Leslie Ann Wilson. With over 12 years of experience and a registered interior designer, Leslie Ann Wilson is the lead interior designer for ESA senior living projects across the country. Her responsibilities include space planning, design development, selection and application of architectural elements, finishes and lighting, creating furniture, art and drapery packages, and implementing design solutions. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in interior design from Stanford University, and she is a content contributor for the advisory board's Senior Care Infrastructure Matrix. The next speaker I would like to introduce is Sam Burnette. Sam Burnette is a principal with ESA. Sam Burnette's 38 years at ESA have been concentrated in the design of senior living and healthcare projects across the country. He in fact leads ESA's design of healthcare facilities in the world's largest senior living community, The Villages in The Villages, Florida. His most recent completed project there is the Center for Advanced Healthcare at Brownwood in The Villages. Sam is a sought-after speaker and author and is an invited repeat guest lecturer at Texas A&M School of Architecture Spring Lecture Series. In May, he'll be a panel participant in a webinar for Modern Healthcare Magazine. In June 2020, he was an invited panel participant in Healthcare Design Magazine's webinar, COVID-19 Lessons Learned. And in the March 2020 issue of Healthcare Design, he authored tips for rapid room conversion to handle COVID-19 patients. He's a member of the HCD Editorial Advisory Board. He has also presented at the State of Florida's AHCA Conference on Design for the Aging Population. Sam holds a Bachelor of Science degree in architecture from the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. And with that, those are our two speakers, and I'll turn it over to you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. We have a very trusted assistant in our team who's going to pull out the slides in just a minute, and we'll start the presentation. But I think it's appropriate to start off this presentation the proper way between Tennesseans and Texans and give everyone a big howdy. Thank you for being on the call with us today. Carrie, we're ready to roll as soon as you can get us pulled up. What we're going to talk with you about today is a case study with the largest senior living community and city, which is the Villages, Florida. Some of you may have heard of this city. You might see the cable television advertisements for retirees to come and spend their golden years at the Villages, Florida. They have now become a notable city on the map of Florida, and you'll see them in all the national news stations. Villages is about an hour north of Orlando and is an incorporated city now. Okay, Carrie. A little bit about our firm before we dive in. ESA is a one-office architectural and interior design firm located in Nashville, Tennessee. Several times we have considered opening branch offices in large states where we do a lot of work, such as California or Florida, but we continue to defer doing that because we can manage our firm's culture and our firm's quality control and our mission of being very human-centered design out of one office in Nashville. We're about 190 people strong now. And one of the things that I'm very proud of about our firm is we are an EDAC committed firm. That's evidence-based design, accredited, certified professional. And that is a commitment in designing to improve patient outcomes in medical and senior living facilities through good design interventions. You can see the majority of our staff on the grand staircase just outside of our office tower. We are a very diverse firm, and we are also very proud of the longevity of our employees that has an average 15-year tenure in our office. And that's something in this day and age to also be very proud of. Okay. So let's talk about the Villages Regional Hospital as our case study for what this topic is today, which is designing our acute care facilities for an aging population. Okay, and why is that important? all healthcare needs to be designed to be handicap accessible. It needs to be designed to be safe and cleanable, with a higher level of air change and air systems, so that the facility itself is a good environment for patients. But seniors have a very specific need to ramp up those levels of details. And Leslie Ann is going to speak specifically about some of those in a few minutes. With her background in designing for senior living, we're bringing that knowledge base into our healthcare facilities at an exponential pace now. And we're going to share some of those thoughts with you. You see on this map the largest residential development in the US, and we believe in the world. There's 3 adjoining counties that make up the villages. It now spans over 22 miles from north to south. Is this incorporated city? They are just under 140,000 people in the villages, and they continue to grow to the south and southwest. The projection today is 155,000 plus, and that will continue to grow as they continue acquiring land for this contiguous retirement property. You see the median age is 67.4. The ages there range between age 55 all the way into the late 90s. And these seniors move there for their golden years, have a tremendous active lifestyle, and a very social group of people. They tout the brand that the healthiest hometown, America's healthiest hometown, and that's for 2 reasons. One is they're very physically active. They're very involved in athletics and sports and other club activities, and they're very socially active. This is not a lonely crowd of seniors, and that's very notable. Many seniors, and maybe people in our own family, have a tremendous problem with mental health and loneliness because they don't have other people there in their age group to do things with socially. And that's one of the most popular components about the lifestyle of living in the villages. Let's talk about the experience. We're going to go over several categories with you of translating good senior living design into our hospital and healthcare settings. The first one I want to talk about is more emotional before we get into physical design details. As I said earlier, ESA is very human-centered in our design knowledge. Architecture in buildings and campuses are for people. They're for people first. And we need to remember that in our design, whether you're designing a hospital or a hotel or an educational facility or a recreational facility. It's about the people. And that translates into the design details. The vernacular is very important, that these facilities are very regionally comfortable. We're not bringing in plant materials and other landscape that's foreign to Central Florida, as you can see in this wellness garden that connects 3 buildings in the medical complex. The biophilic part of that, to take the landscaping further, where we can, we bring in water and plants with color and plants with pleasant odors that enhance that sensory comfort. And if you think about a patient going to a hospital, it's usually not for a good reason, unless it's for delivering a baby, which is not going to be happening at the villages. They're past that. It's not a pleasant situation. So what we have to do is make this environment comfortable and reduce their anxiety before they finally find their way to the point of service inside the facility. Okay. And so translating that in the interior, music therapy and natural artwork that showcases the natural floral and landscape materials adds to that comfort level. Music is a very important part of therapy in senior living facilities, in memory care, in Alzheimer's units. Music can bring someone back where they forgot who they are and where they are. They can remember a song from their high school or college days that brings them back. And that's true for us in all ages. Let's talk about the site now, some specific plan details. long before we had a second energy crisis and we were talking about electric cars, the villages were driving around in golf carts before all of the electronic vehicles were even a concept. For one, it's their preferred mode of transportation to go short distances within their community. And secondly, it's much more affordable means of transportation to charge a battery to your golf cart versus filling up your tank of fuel every 5 or 6 days. But with seniors, here's a very important detail. If you see all the icons to the left, as some of them lose their ability to drive safely, especially after hours in the evening, there has to be other forms of transportation that you have to think about accommodating in your healthcare facility. It might be an Uber, Lyft, or taxi, or bus, or other public transportation. So as you're planning your facilities in healthcare for all ages, but particularly for seniors, be very conscientious of having access for drop off and pickup for those forms of transportation. I want to talk about the 3 bullets briefly, and the term intuitive wayfinding is exactly what it says. Wayfinding is a term we use a lot, and some people may not understand what wayfinding is. It's exactly what it says. It's being able to find your way quickly and easily so that it reduces the stress and you're not making half a dozen turns from your car to your point of service inside a healthcare facility. So you want to make the parking patterns and your interior corridor patterns very simple. Let's don't make those a rat maze of what looks like a crossword puzzle to find your way into the interior service. You want your parking proximate, and when it can't be, in the case of the villages, they don't have the luxury of acreage. This is all built on about 5 acres. The majority of the parking is several hundred feet away. So the gentleman driving the courtesy cart on your left supplements that long distance, and they're running these carts 24/7 to bring that customer focus to their campus. And then lastly, clear signage. I can't overemphasize how important signage is to supplement good design. It can't replace bad design, but it can certainly supplement good design. From the site, you think about trip hazards inside a building, but there are thousands of trip hazards outside the building. And if you'll notice the parking lot photo in the upper right, but what's right about this picture? I can promise you it's not their parking skills. What's right about this picture is there's no wheel stops. Every wheel stop in a parking lot is a potential trip hazard, and those are eliminated on this site. Also, in your path of travel between the parking lot to the entrances, you want to eliminate curbs everywhere you possibly can. Curbs, while they serve a purpose in managing stormwater and defining the edge of the street from the sidewalk for safety, they can also be a hazard as a trip hazard between the parking lot and the main entrance. Let's talk a little further about wayfinding. And I'm going to ask Leslie Ann to talk further about that on the interior.
Yeah, sure. So something that's a little bit unique about the Villages Regional Hospital is that they've staffed the concierge desk with 2 staff members, which allows them to physically walk you to your destination in the hospital. As you enter, you are immediately surrounded by some warm, inviting materials, which has a heavier hospitality influence instead of something that's a little bit more institutional. And then they also do things like offering complimentary coffee at the concierge desk, which just reinforces that whole human-centered care. Okay. When you're designing for a hospital like Sam talked about earlier, we want to keep it really simple. Like we talked about, clarity is key with patients and visitors who are already experiencing heightened stress levels in a hospital setting, and that can contribute to disorientation. So we want to make sure that everybody can find their way easily. Clear directions reduce fear, and it also gives the patients and visitors confidence in the hospital's care for them. The design for this hospital incorporated a central concierge and nurse station. You can see highlighted on the plan there at either end of the main corridor and at the patient room corridor intersections. So that offered an opportunity that from any space that you might leave, you have a visual contact with a human. So that was pretty important in this plan. Intentional placement of signage and visual cues was another critical component to the success of this project. The recessed niche that's shown on the photo on the left, it becomes a reference point for patients and visitors and provides an opportunity to trigger a memory, kind of like a breadcrumb, and remind them of their path without the need of a physical sign. That's also achieved with some accent colors throughout the hospital. Providing more intentional signage locations with large font and high contrast letters encourages the patients and the visitors to move forward without overwhelming them with too much information, which could cause confusion and fear again. For example, at these elevator doors, all of the services available from that elevator are listed on the door to make sure that everybody understands where they're going. Another important component in the signage design is contrast. And so notice the gray box at the top, and now we've switched here, see the difference with the orange. As we age, our vision impairments become more common, and it's more difficult for us to see lower contrast in color. ADA has some recommendations on levels of contrast in color to be used in signage for the visually impaired, but these guidelines are also very helpful for seniors. The use of purposeful contrast in the signage at the elevators again makes it really clear that you can see from afar if you're headed in the right direction. Okay, and so now we're going to talk about some hidden hazards that you might not have considered before in a hospital setting. So we all know that lighting is necessary, but if it's not handled carefully, it can become a contributor to some of these hidden hazards. So this photo on the left is an exhibit of a poor lighting execution. The floor is a shiny VCT floor, and there's a window at the end of the hall, and then there's direct overhead lighting, and all of these components contribute to extreme glare. Aging eyes are even more susceptible to glare than others, so their experience could be even more challenging in a setting like this. So the image on the right is showing you intentional ways that desirable lighting levels were achieved without the severe glare. The flooring has a matte finish, which helps to keep the glare from the floor happening. The cove lighting in the corridor there has indirect lighting, which offers a less harsh overhead lighting. It shines up on the ceiling instead of directly down towards the floor, which gives it an overall glow with sufficient lighting instead of directly over your head. And then in spaces where a little bit more lighting is needed, such as this little nurse station charting alcove here, the overhead task lighting has a diffuser, which more evenly distributes a higher level of lighting for that work surface there. Understanding your building orientation is another critical component to the success of your project. And so we had a scenario with some south facing windows at the end of the corridor, as shown in this enlarged plan in the center here. It could cause an issue like that bad photo from our previous slide with too much light coming into the main corridor. So by creating a day room at the end of the hall, we were able to capture an amenity space for patients and visitors and reduce the glare at the end of the hall with a double layer of glass, which kind of acts like sunglasses for the corridor, but also provides a space with some really nice views for patients and visitors alike. As we previously discussed, lighting has a major impact on spaces and how successfully they're used. And a positive experience for patients means good care and good rest and hopefully a short stay. So lighting plays a huge and important role in promoting good or bad sleep for patients' experiences. The photo on the left is another bad example of poor lighting conditions. The glare and the high gloss again make for a severe setting for both patients and for staff. This scenario provides a lot of light pollution also from the corridor into the patient rooms, which could keep patients awake when they should be resting. The image on the right shows a better example of lighting design. The task lighting is isolated to the nursing work areas, and the corridor lighting is indirect lighting again, and it aids in minimizing that light pollution into the patient rooms. Additionally, this was designed with the lighting system to dim in the evenings and aid with the circadian rhythm of the patients while offering sufficient pathway lighting for staff. Sound is also a huge contributor to a positive patient experience, and Sam's going to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Okay, so what types of sound problems do we have in a hospital facility? If you think about the essence of a medical facility, there are a lot of medical equipment devices and even office equipment devices that either have a beeping noise, a buzz, a constant grinding sound. And collectively, that between that and the overhead paging and just human conversation in a corridor or a public space, it can be an overwhelming amount of noise. Seniors, as they age, their hearing diminishes, and you do have to speak loudly in some cases, but too much noise can be overwhelming and just continue to add to their anxiety. So the photo on the left shows you an example of some ways to mitigate that. Just the use of bulkheads over your nurse stations or your nurse work areas really creates a vertical way to capture some of that sound that tends to bounce off of even a good acoustical ceiling. And you can capture that and baffle that in your ceiling details. It also helps define a staff space and gives that an edge so that desk is not just leaking out into the corridor. The NRC rating is very important with finishes that account for that, particularly with your ceilings. And in a cost of a project, it is pennies on the dollar to get a higher NRC rating, which means noise reduction coefficient, to get a high quality, high sound absorption quality in your ceiling tiles or ceiling system. The labor to install a cheap tile versus a nice tile is the same. So just for pennies on the dollar, you can get a high rating as high as a 0.95 noise reduction coefficient in your ceiling tiles. It makes a huge difference in capturing that noise. If you start with the photograph on the left, you see this beautiful patient room with a patient lift and nice wood finishes and nice views to nature and so on. But what you don't see is a hidden hazard behind that bed. That hidden hazard is potentially loud occupants in the room behind that patient bed in the next room. And so when you see all those medical gas outlets and all those electrical outlets on the top and bottom of that head wall, when you have a mirror image patient room or even another space on the other side, quite often those gases and outlets are symmetrical. They're back to back. And if you look at the section in the middle, it is quite often that those fixtures get cut into the wall and they interrupt your sound attenuation or your sound insulation between that room. Simply by widening that wall to a wider 6-inch stud, for example, and getting that high density sound bat material between those back-to-back outlets, you can greatly mitigate the vacuum effect of noise traveling through those walls and disturbing the families or patients in the adjacent space. And then lastly, if you look at the shot on the right, that is something that we've all seen when we're visiting friends and family in the hospital, maybe an ICU room, where it is beeping monitors and constant noise and buzzing from all this life safety support equipment, which is necessary. But can you imagine trying to get a good night's sleep or any sleep at all in a room where you are totally surrounded with this loud beeping equipment? So a lot of times just having a say in selecting smart equipment that can be a quieter system or even eliminating some of these beeping monitors that can be managed with better technology can help the patients rest and help their length of stay be shortened.
Another hidden hazard is trip hazards, which we talked a little bit about in the parking lot and entering this hospital. As we age, we develop mobility issues and we tend to shuffle our feet or require assisting devices such as canes or walkers or wheelchairs. My dad calls that the maturing process. And these mobility issues can make the slightest change in plane on the floor feel like a mountain and be a potential fall for a senior. As a designer, if you can provide a detail for a negligible transition between flooring materials, such as the tile and carpet transition we're highlighting in this photo, you can make a very successful transition and positive experience for patients and visitors. So what we're showing here is how we used a very minimal metal transition strip between the porcelain tile floor and its adjacency to the carpet, so that there's just no transition in height between those products at all. Here's another example of a minimal transition. This is between the poured epoxy floor and the patient bathroom. I'm on my senior living kick with resident. We're talking about patients. This goes from the patient toilet into the patient room on the wood look sheet vinyls in the patient room. And the paperclip is shown there just to give you some scale of this low profile transition strip. Many times between a bathroom and a patient room, you'll see like a big solid surface or marble threshold. You'll see those in a hotel or even in your home as well. And even though those can be designed to meet ADA requirements, they still tend to cause a trip hazard because they're kind of a chunky beveled piece of stone there. Trip hazards are especially prevalent in the bathroom. The wet floors and the shower curbs and the tight space mixed with the limited mobility of a patient can all contribute to the potential for a fall in a vulnerable setting. And this handicapped patient room shower was designed to have a curbless solid surface prefabricated pan with a trench drain. The low profile of this particular shower pan does not require that you depress the slab in order to drain properly. And there's no curb to step over, which eliminates the potential hazard there. The solid surface material that's used for that pan is durable, antimicrobial, and slip resistant. And additionally, the trench drain and overflow drain in the room keep the water inside the shower and keep the floors dry. This type of accessible design is always a great idea for seniors as well. Now I think Sam's going to talk a little bit more about safety features in the patient rooms.
Okay, so when we're talking about reducing falls and trip hazards, patients who are in a hospital at any age, but particularly seniors, are very frail, and they're either there for an orthopedic or a neurological or cardiology episode in all likelihood. So they're not 100% mobile when they're in the facility. A place where a huge percentage of falls takes place in a patient unit is that taking that leap of faith between the bed and the patient bathroom. And so if you start with the shot on the left, you'll see that we have added additional handrails, grab bars, to help that patient cruise along the wall and take that leap of faith to the restroom once they're capable of ambulating and going to the restroom on their own accord. That dangerous 5 feet between the toilet door and the bed is where a significant amount of falls take place. We can help with that, reducing that. If you look at the image in the middle, you'll see the patient lift that, as you saw in the previous photo. That not only allows transport from the bed to a stretcher safely where the patient isn't literally dropped by trying to do that manually, it also reduces strain injuries with the staff who are lifting these patients for transport to other parts of the hospital. The shot at the bottom represents a corridor, a public corridor, and a handrail that is not only required, but very functional detail to assist not only the patients, but their family and friends and other seniors who need that assistance going along the corridor to help with their stability in that corridor journey. And lastly, the shot on the right, something that's really important to your nursing staff and your clinical staff is to have better observation of the patients in their care. And these alcoves is something that not only our firm, but many firms are really doing as a common practice now, putting a nursing and a clinician work alcove between a pair of patient rooms. So when they're charting or taking just a quick break to sit down and return a phone call, for example, they can keep an eye on the patients under their care. And should those patients try to get out of bed on their own, and they shouldn't be, or if they're struggling, just that visual contact is a premier detail to try to incorporate. You can have monitoring and closed caption, closed circuit TV cameras and so on, but the direct visualization is a key detail in good design of patient units.
There's a few things to keep in mind when you're selecting furnishings that are senior friendly. One thing to remember is to try to do a little bit higher seat height, like a minimum of 19 inches high, because the slightly higher seat height assists seniors in both sitting and standing from the chair, then they won't have as far to go. Sturdy arms are also a must for selecting seating for seniors, as they use the arms to enter and exit the chair with not much core strength. And then one more thing to consider is casters. Even though they seem like they might be real helpful when putting those little wheels on the bottoms of your chair legs, they can also be really dangerous for seniors because they end up putting their body weight on those arms of the chairs, and that can potentially cause a flip from that piece of furniture, which could cause injury to the resident or patient or visitor. So just a few little items to consider that don't really affect the aesthetics too much with furnishings for seniors.
So we're winding down and close to wrapping up the formal presentation, and there's just a few summary points I'd like to make to our audience and guests today. And this is to those of you who may be a client someday in the future. When you're selecting an architectural team and your design team, interior design, mechanical, plumbing, electrical engineers, the entire team, we believe it's very important to have a team who has senior living experience to bring to your healthcare setting. That can't be replaced by not having that. You either know this information or you don't. And likewise for the contractor, we know every project goes through a budgeting reconciliation. And in today's climate, particularly, there is a lot of escalation in raw materials cost and a real strain on the labor market. There's so much good large projects going on that the sub market is very stressed right now, very stretched. I mean, it's good that they're busy, but costs are going up. And so you're going to go through that horrendous value engineering, cost cutting process. And it's important to have a contractor on board who's a champion for these details, who's not trying to find ways to cheapen the building by reducing these type of details that we've shown you today. In wrapping up, I want to just give you a quick summary. We have talked about the experience for seniors, keeping it simple from a wayfinding and access standpoint, how important first impressions are, and bringing hospitality into your designs for seniors, minimizing glare and other lighting challenges, promoting good sleep, reducing noise, background noise and noise pollution, eliminating trip and fall hazards, and good details in seating and furniture. And this is just a tip of the iceberg of what I wish we could cover with you today in less than an hour. But it gives you a good flavor of the importance of bringing good design into healthcare settings that are appropriate for seniors, which are becoming a growing part of the market in healthcare facilities. With that, I would like to turn it back over to our hosts, George and Luis, and we're happy to answer any questions.
What a wonderful presentation, Sam and Leslie Ann. And there's a clarity about everything you do and the way you speak and the way you show these details, which are so important, but they're easy to absorb. Excellent communication. So with saying that, I'd like to turn this over to any student or faculty member or guest to come on and say something.
Sam and Leslie Ann, and sorry, my You
That's
go
all
ahead.
right. Go ahead. I'll chime in after you.
Okay, because somebody mowing my lawn, I trying to say it quick. And I really appreciate that presentation. And my research area is in design for aging as well. It's great to see you cover all the details that you in the design is terrific. And what's the major difference when you're considering design for the senior or design for a typical acute hospital? I think the same rules apply to the general acute hospital as well, right? And my second question is that what's the typical length of stay? And is it having a difference between the general hospital or the hospital for seniors?
Okay, I think I caught both. Let me answer the first one. The details we've talked about today, the difference between a normal acute care hospital and designing for seniors. The good news is everything we've talked about is not a detriment or a compromise to the younger generations. We've all been in, let's take a hotel, for example. We've all been in that handicap accessible hotel room where the sleeping room is maybe the size of the bathroom, and you lose other amenities in that hotel room because it's wheelchair accessible. But if you paid attention carefully to the details we're showing you today, those details are not a bad thing for a younger population. It's just the details that we talked about, and Zipong has these details as well in his studies, are a higher level of thinking and bringing that knowledge to make these buildings a little safer, a little better outcome, a little less imposing and intimidating for seniors who have a wide range of physical and mental and emotional impairments. As we all age, we start losing those motor skills and hearing and vision, and maybe start beginning to lose the beginning of our memory skills. And so when you can make those accommodate seniors, it's helping everybody, but it's above and beyond code minimums. And I think that's the key takeaway, is bring that knowledge from senior living that is a step above just a normal acute hospital. And as far as the naming of the two, the name of this facility is the Villages Regional Hospital, and they now call it the Villages Hospital under the new branding. It's not a geriatric or a hospital just for seniors, but that is certainly probably 90% of the market share who visit this facility, because it's very close to a major highway in Central Florida. It's a combined highway 27 and 441. That's an arterial highway that connects Ocala to Orlando. You do have through traffic. There may be traffic accidents, or someone is having a medical episode because they just happen to be in the area, and it's open to the general public. So it's not named specifically for a senior hospital. It is an open, privately owned but publicly accessible hospital to that entire zone of Florida. Does that answer your two questions?
Yes, Sam. Thank you so much.
Okay.
My second question was the length of stay. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're getting into some clinical programming statistics here. The length of stay for seniors at typically in healthcare facilities can be 4 days or longer, and that's a high range compared to a younger market. It fluctuates up and down, but the length of stay outcomes have been proven to have been reduced by a day and a half or better as an average, Zipong, because these details do not hinder the patient's recovery. They help the patient's recovery.
So,
Thank you, Sam. That's great. Great to know.
great. Carrie, would you mind turning on so we can see all the folks' faces?
Sure can.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. That was a wonderful presentation. And thank you so much. I want to just take a moment. There's one person I'd like you to meet. Her name is Josiane Tanshu, and I don't see you on my big screen. Joe, there you are, Josiane. Please tell us where you get the prize for coming the furthest for the whole semester. And thank you for turning on your camera, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what you're doing and where you are.
Good evening, everybody. I'm saying good evening because I am in France, and now it's time to have dinner. So after the lecture, I'm going for dinner. I'm an anthropologist, and I am interested in the connection between mental health, well-being, and the design of the built environment. And so I joined this lecture series, and I am so glad because I've learned so much. Thanks to the organizers, thanks to the speakers. I'm always been, asking myself what's going on in the mind of an architect when he is designing. And I've been having a lot of answers. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
It was
you.
great to have you. And we hope, Josiane's visited Texas A&M a few years ago. We went to the Bush Library, and we hope we see you back sometime soon, okay?
I hope so. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so we are closing this lecture series, and it's just amazing. There's always more things to learn as long as you have an open mind. And I want to thank everybody for participating. I will stay on if anybody has any questions about getting credit for AIA forms and or any other questions or discussion. So with that, good luck on your exams and in life, and I hope we see you back for the next lecture series. So Ron, do you want to say anything in closing?
I just want to give my thanks and congratulations to Sam and Leslie Ann for a wonderful presentation. And I agree with the previous comments. Their emphasis on the details that sometimes we don't get into in architecture school is really what makes a project work. So thank y'all for doing that. And best wishes to the two of you.
Thank you. And Jason, anything you want to add? No? Zipang, where are you? You must be on the other screen.
On my screen is next to you.
Oh, yeah, my condolences. Oh, okay. I'm above Uncle Dave on my screen. So I'll hang around for a little bit. I don't know if Ron has time or Zipang, and we can let everybody go. And I'm going to give a big reaction of applause and thumbs up for us. We can give our speakers a hand. Say hi to everybody in Nashville.
Real hands.
Yeah, right, the real hands. Good luck on whatever you're doing.
Thank y'all so much.
Yeah,
Thank
Joe,
you.
thank you.
Bye to everyone.
Bye, guys.
I have a question for Leslie.
Sure.
The olfactory receptors are so important in memory care.
Mhm.
And as you all had mentioned at the very beginning of your presentation, in the landscape, do you have any recommendations on how to incorporate this in the interior environment to promote a sense of place?
Well, memory care is a delicate area for design, like you mentioned. And so, but the FGI guidelines are actually requiring that memory care residents have access to the outdoors at all times. And so we've had to get creative in a few projects on how to achieve that, especially when it's on an upper floor, maybe a conversion of a 3-story assisted living, for example. And so we've been able to try to create some either screened in porch areas or like sunroom areas. But the trick about memory care design that I'm learning as I continue my career here is that spaces have to be very obvious for what the use is for memory care residents. So trying to mix in different types of uses and spaces, even though it's very, it sounds great on paper because it's efficient from a square footage standpoint, it can be very confusing for residents. So it should be really intentional. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I was thinking in terms of, because, you know, I was really attracted to, you know, the use of the landscape and that
Sure.
part of it. But I'm wondering if there might be a way, and if maybe you've seen this, of using, you know, some type of, whether it be, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word that I want to use, but, you know, incorporating the sense of smell, you know, to entice, you know, whether it is aromatherapy of some sort that might create that sense of belonging, but also to ease anxiety.
Yeah, so one example that we've done in several memory care communities is we've designed what we're kind of calling an activity kitchen that I'm sure you've seen before, that are kind of centrally located in the plan. And it looks like a residential kitchen, and maybe it's got a big island or a big farm table out in the middle so that residents can gather around. But that is an opportunity for not only staff to have kind of a central touchdown space that doesn't look like a nurse station, but it also offers you the opportunity to bake cookies and have that aroma throughout the space, or pop popcorn or something like that. But then in those spaces like a tub room, which we might design to be more spa-like instead of feeling again institutional, or like a quiet room where there's, you know, some soft seating and music, we might also incorporate some essential oil diffusers or something like that for some aromatherapy. So yeah, it's very beneficial for residents, not just visual cues, but also those sensory cues. Great question.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah,